So, for those of you who have felt stuck for quite some time or even a small amount of time and you're feeling like shit because of it, because you're working so much, but the money is not increasing, I'm going to give you a new frame that I didn't like. I've had to remind myself this over and over again. And this morning, I just woke up feeling like shit because the last 3 weeks have been really bad in terms of like growth, and we are down from last month, and like it's pretty stupid because last month was a record month and now we're down, and I'm like getting all upset about it. um, but this will be helpful if you understand what I'm, if you understand the feeling that I'm talking about. So this is how I would look at it, right? So typically, and this is what my revenue looks like, and over time, and I'm sure this will apply to 95% of you out there, right? This should be familiar. You'll know, it starts off like you're just working. So I'll make two graphs here, right? So this graph is how much you are working, and this graph is how much money you are making, right? So what ends up happening, right, is, let's do the work as red. You're just going to continuously work more and more over time, right? So you have, you're going to continue working and time is elapsing, right? Now, this is bottom axis is, or x-axis is time, and then this is, work, basically. So you are working overtime. Makes sense, right? This is how much you are making per unit of time. So let's say dollars per month. So this is your monthly MRR, right? And then this is also time. Now, when you are trying to scale and you're working, what's going to end up happening with your money is when you start, obviously everyone knows this, you start making zero and you're just continually working, right? And then all of a sudden, poof, your revenue explodes. And then you stay stuck. And then poof, right? And it's very rarely where, revenue per month with your work goes up like this, right? It's normally like it goes up and then stays stagnant, or even like goes down a little bit and then it goes up, and it's like a, fucking like, if you have your emotions attached to this, then you're, in a world of hurt, basically, which is kind of where I was up until, I actually critically thought about this. So when you overlap these two, right? And if you just look at this, right, and you overlap these two, what's going to end up happening is this period here, you're working and you're continuing to work more, and then the revenue is staying the same, and you're feeling like, I'm probably not doing something right. But this is actually what's happening. And I actually did make a video about this like 5 months ago, and then I just forgot, apparently. So this is an important reminder for myself, and hopefully will be relevant for you as well. So this is basically what's happening. So you might be working, right? And you are, what basically happens is, in order for this spike to occur, right, there are a certain amount of skills that you need to accomplish. So last time I made this video, it was about hiring setters. So it was about, picking the right person, right? Then it was about training them, right? Then it was about, making the right incentive structure, right? And then it was about management, right? But here's the thing, is that you have these four things. This is just a very basic example, right? But you have these four things that you need to accomplish, right, in order for you to be able to hit this spike. But what ends up happening is, when you're working, you are checking these off, right? These are different skills, right? Picking, training, incentivizing, and management. Like, these are different skills that you must acquire in order to successfully like complete the large skill of like fixing the setter problem, which is going to allow this to happen. But what's going to happen is, if you have this graph of like, setter management. So this is like, we'll make another graph. This is a skill, right? Over time, right? So your skills are going to automatically go up over time if you're, working on these skills, right? But what's going to happen is, let's say you check off half of these boxes. So you've worked like, X amount, and you've achieved half of these things. That your revenue doesn't go up to like halfway, right? Because until you have solved all of these, your revenue is going to stay stuck, right? Because you're getting the micro skills, but you don't have the macro skill yet of being able to do all of these, right? So because of that, your revenue, like, you still haven't solved the bottleneck, and your revenue is going to stay stuck. So this is what I was feeling like this morning, is I've like been working very hard on like the same freaking problem for the last while, for the last few weeks. And I know it sounds like, yeah, a few weeks is nothing, which you're right, it's not. But when you're doing like, when you're in it, it feels like you're doing a lot and you're just not getting much out of it. So I was like, really disappointed because I'm like, I'm doing all this work and then like the revenue is like going like down from last month. Like maybe I'm like here. And it's like, well, why am I, and then, you're questioning all these things. Like, do I even want to do this? And you're having these like ridiculous thoughts, right? Um, but, like right now, my current bottleneck is, hiring, training, managing, ramping closers, right? So there's, right, multiple different skills. So that's hiring, right? And then there's ramping, and then there's training, which is kind of the same thing. So we'll say, right, management, and then there's like giving feedback, and there's like, I'm not going to do all of them, right, but there's like a lot of different skills inside this thing. So even though my revenue is a little bit less than it was last month, I'm like objectively a better sales manager than I was last month. So me tying how I feel about myself to this is ridiculous, because I am making progress, even though the revenue does not show that I'm making progress. Only until I have unlocked all of these things will the revenue actually reflect that. And then it will go up again, right? We'll double, because we'll have twice the amount of sales reps and we're already getting enough appointments for that. And then it'll stay stuck again. And it'll be like, oh, now I need to, unlock another skill. And then and then I'm going to feel like shit again, because it's going to, stay in the stagnate or go a little bit lower until I fix the problem, and then it will go up again, right? So instead of, tying your, like, because this is just me personally, maybe I'm the only one that's like this, right? But I tie my, my feeling and my happiness to my progress. And if I'm not making progress, I feel kind of shit, right? So because you shouldn't base your progress based on your revenue. You should base your progress based on your skill, because this is what is going up. So as long as you are checking off these boxes, and as long as you are getting better at what you are doing, even though the revenue is not showing it, because revenue is not directly proportional to your work in a short period of time, or directly proportional to your skill level over a short period of time, that does not mean you are not making progress. And this is basically the quote that I remember that I learned this from Hormozi, is that when you are not making progress, or sorry, when the business is not making progress, you are. So basically what that translates to in this is, when your revenue is not going up, your skill is. And if your skill goes up enough, maybe to like this point where you've checked all these 4 things off, then your revenue will, assimilate to that. So basically just reframing as long as you're, if you're like being stuck in the same place for like 2 years, then you're probably just like working on the wrong thing, right? If you are working at all. But you might like very well, and I know I'm working on the right thing, because there are people who are, smarter than me, who are where I want to be, telling me that, this is what I need to do. And it makes sense, obviously, but it's just, it's having the idea that my progress is, it needs to be, my feeling of progress should not be based on this revenue number in the short term. It should be based on this skill. And as long as, I am better at one of these things than I was yesterday, then I am making progress, and I don't need to, cry about it. I wasn't crying about it, obviously. Well, not necessarily, obviously, right? But yeah, anyways, I'm kind of getting off track. But the point is, if you tie yourself, and if you tie your feeling of progress to this, it's going to be, you're going to be on a emotional roller coaster, because this is like a roller coaster of a graph, right? But as long as you're developing the skills, and you can see that you're better at the skills that you need to be in order to reach this point where your revenue starts to go up exponentially, then that's what you should feel, or I guess that's where you should put your attention, and that's where you should put your validation, I guess. Maybe you have a better way of looking at this, but this has helped me a ton in not, like being upset when I'm not making revenue, or making more amounts of revenue every single week. So yeah, this is basically just how I look at it. Hopefully this is helpful. I know this was a little bit of a weird one, but this has just helped me a ton. So figured it might help someone else.